People idolize the idea of mentors as if they're mythical beings sent from the heavens to unlock your hidden potential and whisper secrets of success into your ear. They picture gray-haired sages with calm smiles, or battle-tested founders dispensing wisdom like surgeons performing routine procedures. But anyone who has been in the trenches of entrepreneurship knows the truth. The mentors who matter are rarely the ones on the conference stages. They're the ones who walk with you through the fire, who challenge you when you least want to hear it, who cut through your excuses with the precision of a scalpel, and who sometimes save you from yourself. I didn't understand that in the beginning. I thought a mentor was someone impressive, someone with accolades, achievements, a resume stacked like a skyscraper, so I chased those people. I sent emails, attended events, tried to impress them with polished pitch decks and big dreams. And sure, they smiled, nodded, gave generic advice, but none of it changed my life. None of it changed my company, because real mentorship doesn't begin with admiration. It begins with honesty. The mentor who mattered most to me was a man nobody outside our city knew. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He didn't have a Wikipedia page or a book deal. What he had was a kind of brutal clarity that could cut through my delusion like a hot knife through rope. The first time we met, I walked in expecting praise. Instead, he looked at my 40-slide pitch deck and said, "This is bullshit." I froze. Nobody had spoken to me like that before. I was used to people sugarcoating things, telling me my idea was interesting, promising, innovative. But this man didn't care about sparing my feelings. He cared about making me better. "You're hiding behind complexity," he continued. "Tell me in one sentence what problem you solve. If you can't do that, you don't have a company. You have a hobby." I hated him for that sentence, but I needed it. Every founder needs someone willing to rip the fantasy out of their hands before the market does it for them. That conversation didn't just change my pitch, it changed my trajectory. But mentors aren't just blunt instruments. The good ones know when to push and when to pull. This man, let's call him David, had a way of listening that felt like he was dissecting every word, every hesitation, every hidden fear. He didn't give me answers. He gave me questions, hard ones, painful ones. Questions that forced me to confront the weak foundations I had been pretending were solid. "Why do you want this?" he asked once. "Not the business, not the product, the journey." I didn't know how to answer, so he pushed again. "Because if your reason isn't stronger than your fear, this thing will eat you alive." It took me weeks to articulate my answer. But by the time I did, something inside me had shifted. Mentors who matter don't teach you how to build a company. They teach you how to build yourself. And the version of me that walked into that room the first day was not the version capable of surviving what was coming. But here's the thing about real mentors. They don't just guide you when you're listening. They guide you when you're breaking. The lowest point of my startup journey wasn't a failed product launch or a cash flow crisis or even losing my co-founder. It was the night I realized I no longer believed in myself. Months of rejection had morphed into a quiet poison, eating away at my confidence. Users churned. Investors ghosted. My bank account hovered between zero and humiliation. One night, alone in the office, I leaned back in my chair and whispered, "Maybe I'm not cut out for this." And in that silence, my phone buzzed. It was David. No preamble, no small talk. He just said, "You're too quiet. What's happening?" I told him everything. The fear, the exhaustion, the doubt that felt like it was climbing up my throat. He listened. Then he said something that seared into my memory. "If you quit now, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what version of yourself you could have been. Pain is temporary. Regret is permanent." That sentence didn't fix everything, but it kept me alive. It kept the company alive. And sometimes, that's all a mentor needs to do, keep you fighting one more day. But not all mentorship is gentle guidance. Sometimes it's confrontation so sharp it feels like betrayal. There was a moment when the company started gaining traction. Investors called. Journalists emailed. Users multiplied. And I, like many founders drunk on early success, started believing my own hype. I became arrogant, dismissive, impatient. My team felt it. My product suffered for it. And one afternoon, after watching me tear apart a junior employee for a small mistake, David pulled me aside with a look I had never seen before. "You've forgotten who you were," he said. "And if you keep going like this, you will lose everything you think you deserve." It was the hardest feedback I had ever received, but it was also the most important. Mentors who matter don't protect your ego. They protect your future. And I needed protecting from the worst version of myself. I apologized to the employee. I rebuilt trust with my team. And from that moment on, I carried his words like armor against my own ego. But mentors don't just correct you, they expand you. As the company evolved, I found myself bumping against the limits of my own experience. I had never scaled a team, never managed a board, never negotiated a seven-figure deal. Every step forward felt like walking into a room where everyone else already understood the rules except me. David helped me see those moments not as inadequacies, but as invitations. "A good founder knows what they don't know," he said. "A great one learns fast enough that nobody notices." He taught me how to ask better questions, how to listen without defensiveness, how to see around corners by understanding not just what people said, but why they said it. He sharpened me in ways I didn't realize until years later, when I found myself guiding younger founders who reminded me painfully of who I once was. But there's something else about mentors nobody talks about. They leave. Not always dramatically. Sometimes life pulls them in different directions. Sometimes your journey evolves faster than their ability to guide it. Sometimes the relationship simply reaches its natural end. With David, it wasn't one big moment. It was a slow fade, the kind you don't notice until one day you look around and realize you've been walking alone again. But by the time he stepped back, he had already given me what I needed. Not answers, but frameworks. Not solutions, but strength. Not shortcuts, but the courage to walk into uncertainty without collapsing. And as I continued building the company, I found myself hearing his voice in moments he no longer witnessed. His lessons had embedded themselves into my instincts. That's how you know a mentor mattered. Their influence remains long after their presence fades. Over the years, I met other mentors, each shaping me in different ways. One taught me how to negotiate with integrity. Another taught me how to tell stories that moved investors. Another taught me how to spot the difference between a real opportunity and a beautifully disguised distraction. But the mentors who mattered most were never the ones I worshipped. They were the ones who challenged me, questioned me, even frustrated me. They were the ones who didn't let me settle for being good when I could be relentless. And now, when younger founders come to me wide-eyed, exhausted, clutching dreams that haven't yet been bloodied by reality, I hear myself saying the same things my mentors once told me. I see in them the same fear, the same arrogance, the same hunger, and I realize that the cycle continues. Mentors shape founders. Founders become mentors. And the legacy of one generation becomes the survival guide of the next. Because at the end of the day, you can read all the books, attend all the conferences, listen to all the podcasts, but nothing, absolutely nothing, replaces the impact of someone who sees the version of you that you're too scared to see yourself. And right at the moment when the world feels too loud, too heavy, too impossible, they help you confront the truth that your journey is far from over. And the next chapter will depend entirely on whether you allow yourself the humility and courage required to face the kind of guidance that doesn't comfort you but reshapes you. The kind that presses into your blind spots and forces you to confront the parts of your journey you've conveniently ignored because they were too painful, too messy, or too honest. Because mentorship, the kind that actually builds legends, never arrives wrapped in encouragement alone. It arrives wrapped in truth, and truth has a way of cutting you open before it teaches you how to heal. I learned that the hard way in the months that followed, as David slowly stepped back and I began meeting mentors who operated at entirely different altitudes. One of them was a former CEO who had taken his company public, a man with a stare so sharp it felt like standing in front of an X-ray machine. The first time we met, he didn't ask about my product or my growth metrics. He asked about my calendar. "Show me your week," he said. I pulled up my schedule, proud of how full it looked. Back-to-back meetings, investor calls, team check-ins, product reviews. He didn't even finish scrolling before he said, "You're not running a company. You're drowning in it." I felt the sting immediately. He was right. I wasn't managing my company. I was surviving it. "When everything depends on you," he said, "that's not leadership. That's ego dressed as responsibility." His words forced me to look at the uncomfortable truth. I had built a system where I felt indispensable because it made me feel powerful, but all it really did was make me fragile. That single insight changed the way I worked forever. He made me delegate. He made me trust my team. He made me release control, even when releasing control felt like stepping off a cliff. But every time I let something go, the company grew stronger, not weaker. And that was when I realized mentors aren't there to tell you how to work harder. They're there to teach you how to stop sabotaging your own growth. The next mentor who shaped me did so in a way I never expected. She was a branding expert, sharp, intuitive, terrifyingly perceptive. I showed her my messaging, proud of how clever it sounded. She read the entire thing in silence, then closed her laptop and said, "You're selling features because you don't yet understand your own story." I pushed back. I explained the product, the market, the advantages. She shook her head. "People don't buy what you built. They buy the reason you refuse to quit." She made me rewrite our narrative until it hurt, until the words weren't polished but raw, honest, human. She taught me that storytelling wasn't decoration. It was survival. Because in a world where every startup screams for attention, the ones who win are the ones who make people feel something. She taught me how to make people feel. But the mentor who surprised me the most wasn't older or more experienced. He was younger than me, barely in his 20s, with a mind that worked like lightning. He wasn't my mentor in title. He just happened to join the team early on. But some people lead by the way they think, not the age they carry. One night, after a long discussion about a complex product decision, he looked at me and said, "You're solving yesterday's problem with yesterday's mindset." I stared at him, shocked. Nobody had spoken to me like that since David. But he was right. I was stuck in old assumptions. He forced me to let go of everything I thought I knew about our users, and when I finally listened, the product shifted in ways that changed our trajectory permanently. That taught me another truth about mentorship. Sometimes the people who mentor you aren't above you. Sometimes they're beside you or even behind you, pushing you forward when you don't realize you've stopped moving. But not all mentorship feels enlightening at first. Some of it feels like a punch to the ribs. There was a moment when I thought I had everything figured out. Team running smoothly, product stable, investors happy. I walked into a meeting with a veteran founder, expecting praise. Instead, after I presented our roadmap, he asked one question: "Where is the risk?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Your plan," he said. "It's too safe, too predictable, too comfortable. Good founders optimize stability. Great founders optimize momentum." I wanted to argue, but deep down I knew he was right. I had become so afraid of failing publicly that I had quietly stopped taking bold steps altogether. His question forced me to re-examine everything. We adjusted the roadmap. We placed strategic bets again. We stepped back into the arena instead of hiding behind spreadsheets. And momentum returned because mentors don't just protect you from mistakes. They protect you from stagnation. But the most difficult mentor I ever encountered didn't appear as a person at all. It was failure itself. The kind of failure that sits on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. The kind that whispers your insecurities back to you. The kind that feels like shame wearing your own face. During one brutal quarter, after we lost a major deal, missed key milestones, and watched morale collapse, I wanted to disappear. I avoided team conversations. I delayed updates. I pretended everything was fine while everything was burning behind me. And then one afternoon, A longtime advisor called and said the one sentence nobody wants to hear: "You're leading like someone who has already given up." My stomach dropped. I didn't know what to say. But in that silence, he told me something that changed me. Failure is only a mentor if you're willing to look it in the eye. So I did. I faced every mistake, every oversight, every broken part of the system, including the parts I had caused. And in doing so, I became a different kind of founder, one who could take a hit without losing the ability to lead. Mentors matter because they accelerate evolution, sometimes gently, sometimes violently, sometimes through wisdom, sometimes through wounds. And somewhere along the way, you realize that mentorship isn't about finding the right guide. It's about becoming someone who can receive guidance without breaking, someone who can absorb truth without collapsing, someone who can hold the weight of ambition without letting ego distort the journey. And the strangest part of all is that the moment you become that person, something shifts. Younger founders start showing up at your door, eyes full of the same fire and fear you once carried, hoping you will be the one to help them survive the storms they don't yet know are coming. That's when you understand the final truth about mentors. They don't choose you, they prepare you. And then one day, you become one yourself. That's when you understand the final truth about mentors. They don't choose you, they prepare you, and then one day, you become one yourself. And if anything in this journey resonated with you, if it reminded you of someone who pushed you, challenged you, or refused to let you give up, share that story. Because founder communities grow stronger, not through victories, but through the moments when someone cared enough to guide us through the storm.